everyone, this is me Randy and welcome back to a brand new story time video. Recently I uploaded a video discussing about how I became a fan of Japanese and Korean pop music, and I did mention in that video that I was planning on doing a part 2 for this series, and that is actually today's video. So we'll be discussing how I became a fan of Japanese and Korean rock, hip-hop, and R&B. So of course, the link to the first video, as well as timestamps, will all be provided in the description box down below. And I do want to hurry up and mention that if I do pronounce any names in this video incorrectly, I do sincerely apologize. And especially for Japanese rock groups, I do apologize. So I am going to pronounce the names of many groups as best as I can. So if I do incorrectly pronounce any names in this video, I do apologize, and let me know in the comment section down below. I was actually about to say in the description box, but actually in the comment section if I am saying any names incorrectly, and I do apologize if I do. So with all that information being said, I hope that you all enjoy the rest of the video, and let's begin. So in my first video, I actually opened up the video talking about how I got into J-pop. So we're actually going to switch it up a bit for this video, and I'm going to talk about how I became a fan of Korean hip-hop, R&B, and rock. So starting off with Korean hip-hop and R&B, unlike for both J-pop as well as K-pop, I was actually not familiar with Korean hip-hop, R&B, or rock until I became a fan of K-pop. And just like a lot of people, I learned about a lot of Korean hip-hop and R&B artists through K-pop. And actually, one of the very first Korean R&B artists I actually learned about was actually Beck. And it's actually quite surprising that it was her, because at the time she was still under JYP Entertainment, which, for those who don't know, it is a very big company in the K-pop and actually just the entertainment scene as a whole. So I actually learned about Korean hip-hop and R&B through someone that was at the time part of a really big label that associates with K-pop. And then I started finding out about other artists like Hayes, and then Dean, Zion T, Crush, and the list goes on. And I was actually amazed that there was this whole other music genre that I didn't know existed. I was familiar with K-pop before I got into K-pop, but when it comes to Korean hip-hop and R&B, I was not familiar with the genres at all. I did not know this existed until 2018. I kid you not. I was like, oh my goodness, there is actually hip-hop and R&B music in South Korea. I was so amazed. And finding out a lot about smaller companies that are ran by a lot of artists was really cool. And I'm still very new to the K-pop, or as I should say, K-hip-hop and R&B scene. I don't know everyone, but I do know quite a bit of artists. And this year in particular, I found out about a fantastic Korean R&B artist that goes by the name of Ocean from the Blue. So yes, I have been slowly getting myself more and more into the Korean hip-hop and R&B scene as the years go by, but I've really been enjoying it, and thank you to Miss Beck for sharing and showing me this genre of music that I didn't even know existed. So that is actually how I got into K-hip-hop and R&B, and that was in 2018. As for Korean rock, the same can be said. I did not know about Korean rock music until I got into K-pop as well. And just like with K-hip-hop and R&B, there was a lot of people talking about two groups in particular back in 2018. Like mentioned, that was my first full year being a fan of K-pop, and that is In Flying and Day 6. The first group that I became a fan of was actually N.Flying, and at the time, the K-pop unpopular opinions video trend was actually starting up. I know it's still very popular today, but that's when the trend on YouTube was starting to get popular. And there was that one group that I saw being mentioned time and time again about how underappreciated they were and how a lot of people were not talking about them, and that was N.Flying. And at the time, their latest release was How Are You Doing? So I decided, you know what, a lot of people are talking about them on these videos, let me try them out. I absolutely love rock music. Some of my all-time favorite music groups are rock groups, so I just adore rock music. So when I checked them out for the first time, I was so amazed. I was like, goodness. So there is a hip hop and R&B scene in South Korea, and now there's a rock scene as well. And I just loved it. I absolutely fell in love with N.Flying the moment I first saw them. And then a few months later, there was another group that a lot of people were talking about, which was Day 6 on these YouTube videos as well. And I was saying, hey, you know what? A lot of these groups, a lot of these videos that were mentioning N.Flying, they were also mentioning Day 6, and I decided, you know what, let me give them a try as well. And also, if you cannot tell, a lot of my first encounters when it comes to Korean music genres have to deal with JYP entertainment groups or artists, because Yerin Beck was the person that introduced me to Korean hip-hop and R&B. Day 6 was one of the very first rock groups that I found out about. And also Twice was one of the very first K-pop groups that I became a fan of. So me and JYP, I think we're friends. Sometimes, not all the times. But I was really getting into JYP groups, and artists. But anyway, the song that was their latest at the time was, of course, Shoot Me. And let me tell you, I was blown away. Just like with N.Flying, I was like, oh my gosh, these guys are so good. And just learning about the members and listening to all their music, because I remember very vividly one day, I believe I was on break at the time. I think I was on winter break. I remember at the time I was going through their entire discography, which was up to Shoot Me at that time, and I remember just loving every single song. I remember it was from The Day all the way up to Shoot Me. So at this time, there wasn't many Day 6 albums out, so getting through their discography was quite a breeze, and I remember being so impressed by their music, and I was like, okay, Day 6 and N.Flying are awesome. I need to know more about other rock groups, and I did. And over the years, I've learned about so many, such as FT Island, CM Blue, Nell, which is a group that I feel like not many people talk about, Eve, which is another great group that I don't really feel a lot of people talk about, Track, which is another group that I really feel like is very underrated, especially dealing with SM Entertainment. So there's been a lot of groups that I found out over the years that I really enjoy. Also, a huge shout out goes to Rolling Quartz. They are absolutely amazing as well. So yes, I am so glad that I learned about a lot of different rock groups over the years, because let me tell you, I have been enjoying every minute of it. It's just so awesome to see a music genre that you're already so familiar with, and then just taking that and just adding so much more layers to it, especially with a music genre like rock. There's so much that you can do, and I really have been having so much fun listening and learning about so many amazing rock groups and artists. And also a huge shout out goes to Sotaji as well. I feel like he is perfect to discuss about when it comes to both hip hop as well as rock, because he's done it both so well. So yes, that is how I became a fan of Korean hip hop, R&B, and rock. Now let's get to the Japanese side of things. Unlike with Korean hip hop, R&B, and rock, I was actually very familiar with Japanese hip hop, R&B, and rock. And of course, like mentioned in my previous video, I have been a huge fan of video games and anime for most of my life at this point. I have basically grew up with those forms of media, so there's a lot of songs and even some artists that I was familiar with through being a fan of video games and anime. So when it comes to Japanese hip hop, I've heard of Japanese hip hop over the years. I was familiar with it, but I didn't know anyone by name, unlike with Japanese rock. So my first real exposure to Japanese hip hop and R&B is an anime that I think some of you are familiar with, and it is known as Samurai Champloo. So back in 2017, I want to say I watched Samurai Champloo before I became a fan of Japanese pop and before I became a fan of Korean pop. So I actually was familiar with Japanese hip hop and R&B before I became a fan of those two music genres. So that is actually quite interesting. And I remember watching Samurai Champloo for the first time and absolutely loving it, as it is now my all-time favorite anime series. And one thing that stood out to me, other than the characters, the plot, the emotions from the anime, the animation itself, was the music. And I was saying to myself, oh my goodness, the music for this anime is some of the best I have ever heard, and still to this day, some of the best music I've ever heard from an anime series. And I found out that the two main producers for the soundtrack for this anime was none other than Fat John, who deserves a lot of credit. I don't really feel like he gets the credit that he deserves, but he is a phenomenal producer. But also the late great Nujabes. And I was like, okay, I need to listen to more of both of their music, and let me tell you, there comes a time when you find an artist's music where you need it the most, and I really feel like I found Nujabes at the right time in my life. I just turned 20. I was in my second full year of college, and I remember just listening to so much of his music and just getting so much inspiration and so much happiness and so much life being shown in one's work. And I really feel like, as a young person that is in their early 20s, I still am in my early 20s now, I really feel like I found out about Nujabes at the right time in my life, because there are so many of his songs that he worked on that are just such a part of my daily playlist and just who I am as a person and what I enjoy in my music. And it's just amazing that an anime showed me a whole music genre that I was aware of but didn't get deeply into until that time. And I'm just so grateful that Samurai Champloo is a thing. I love that series so much. It means the world to me. It truly does. And Nujabes and his music and his legacy will forever live on because of this series. And it's just fantastic. It really is fantastic how one form of media makes you become a fan of another form of media. So I listen to not only Nujabes, but I do listen to a lot of Japanese hip hop and R&B artists so much, especially when it comes to lo-fi and chill hop. I know that he is considered to be the originator of those two music genres, but it's just so amazing how an anime can show you a whole new world of music that you've known your entire life, but being able to experience and know about it from someone that lives pull across the world from you. It's just a really cool feeling, and it's just amazing. It really is amazing. And I think his legacy is in good hands because of Samurai Champloo. And it's so great. It really is great to see that. And other artists, I know that was like so deep, goodness, I didn't want to make it too deep there, but it really is so cool to see that. So going back to what I was saying originally before I went into that mini tangent there, other artists that I'm a fan of are Talk the Rhymehead, who is a fantastic, and also more of his music needs to be on Spotify. I mean, I don't know why only one song of his is on Spotify, but there needs to be more of him on Spotify because my Japanese hip hop and R&B solo playlist needs more of him. But also Bazzi, who is fantastic. Oh my goodness, he is amazing. I actually learned about him through a YouTube playlist, and ever since then I became a fan of him. He's just so great. And there's also so many other fantastic Japanese hip hop and R&B artists that I've learned through the internet, which is so cool. Just like with all the other music genres that I previously mentioned, the internet has showed me a lot of fantastic talent from pretty much all over the world, not just South Korea or Japan, but just all over the world. It's so phenomenal. So that is how I became a fan of Japanese hip hop and R&B. And now let's talk about the last music genre that I will be discussing about in today's video, and that is Japanese rock music. And boy, do I have a long story to share with you all. So just like with Japanese hip hop and R&B, I knew about Japanese rock music through anime and video games. No surprise there. But the difference between Japanese rock and Japanese hip hop and R&B is that I actually was familiar with some of the groups and artists and actually did know a few of their songs. Like, for example, The Gazette, TM Revolution, 1OK Rock, Sid, Leark I'm trying to think of someone else. That's all I can really think of, actually. Yeah, that's all I could think of right now. But basically a lot of rock artists that were featured on Japanese anime and video games, I knew about them because of that. So back in high school, so this actually takes it all the way back, I want to say sometime in 2013, I want to say, a good friend of mine, she showed me a song from a group called Bucktick. And at the time, I was familiar with Bucktick as well. I've heard of them, but I wasn't really familiar with their music. I just heard of their name because they are a very popular Japanese rock group. And also, I forgot to mention, I heard of X Japan in the past as well. Of course, I mean, how can you not know about X Japan? But anyway, my friend, she was like, hey, there's this song I'm going to show you. I think you'll really like it. And the song was Kiss Me Goodbye. And my high school self was just like, whoa, that is so cool. Because at this time, this is when I was starting to branch out and finding out what music I like. So one of the genres was, of course, rock music. And I was like, wow, this is so good. And over the years, that was a song that I kept in my head. I was like, this is a song that really stayed with me for a long time, because years later, when I listened to the song again, I was like, wait, this song sounds so familiar. And I was like, oh my gosh, my friend showed me this song when I was in high school. So that is the first part of my Japanese rock story. The second part of this story takes place a few years later, and I want to say around late 2017, early 2018. My best friend, who is listening to this video, hey, she knew a few people that were into Japanese rock music as well, and there was a group that she really liked, and she told me, Randy, you gotta check this group out. I think you would like them a lot. And their name is, of course, Malice Miser. And the song, I don't remember her telling me any song in particular the first time around, because when I saw her again and told her, hey, this Malice Miser group is great, she told me about another one of the songs, which I can't remember the name of. I'm actually going to put the name of the song here because I don't remember the name of the song, but I do remember the song, but just not the name. But when she told me about them the first time, I did my little bit of research, and the very first song by Malice Miser, excuse me, Malice Miser I ever heard was Avoir. And just like with Bucktick with Kiss Me Goodbye, I was like, wow, this is outstanding. I will never forget it. I was blown away when I heard Avoir for the first time. I just could not believe that a song like that was not familiar to me, because I was like, I wish I would have known about the song much sooner in my life, because oh my goodness, it's fantastic. And ever since then, I have been getting more involved in Japanese rock. I've been getting more into Bucktick, X-Japan. This year I found out about Lunacy, and I have been really liking a lot of their stuff. The Gazette, Leark, Hyde, Heide. Man, there's so many artists. Oh my gosh. The Gazette. Oh my goodness. Moity Moy. Of course, Malice Miser. There's just so many. Oh, Jupiter. How can I forget about Jupiter? There is just so many fantastic. Oh my gosh. There's just so many fantastic Japanese rock groups out there that I have just been loving so much. And to be honest with you, I feel like I follow the Japanese rock scene a bit closely, more than Japanese pop. I'm not gonna lie. I actually am kind of familiar with more Japanese rock artists than Japanese pop artists. And I know that's not for a lot of people, but I also at the same time, I feel like that is for a lot of people as well. So I'm not sure if I'm the only one, but don't get me wrong. I still love my J-pop. You know me, J-pop all day. But I've really been enjoying Japanese rock a lot, as well as Japanese hip-hop and R&B. So that's basically how I got into Japanese rock. Like I mentioned, it's quite the lengthy, long story, but I'm so glad that my friends actually introduced me more to this genre, because there's just so many fantastic artists and groups that I've learned over the years, just like the other genres that were mentioned not only in today's video but in my previous video as well, that honestly that are a part of my life now, like Lunacy, Bucktick, X-Japan, Bazzi, Nujabes, Day 6 and Flying, Ocean from the Blue. There's just so many artists that I didn't even know 5, 6, let alone 10 years ago that are now a part of my life. And I'm just, once again, so grateful, because music is such a big part of my life, and adding more amazing music groups and artists into my music life just makes it even better, because there's so many amazing people in the world that are making music. And with the help of the internet, but also with the help of word of mouth, more and more people are getting into these groups that you probably would have never known about in 10 years ago or 15 years ago. And I'm just so grateful. I truly am so grateful. I'm so happy, and I cannot wait to see what more amazing Japanese and Korean hip-hop, R&B, and rock music artists that I will learn in the future. So once again, thank you all so much for listening to this very long video. I hope that you all enjoyed, and if you did, make sure to give this video a thumbs up. Comment down below your experiences with these music genres, and like previously mentioned, if you have not checked out my first storytime video, I will leave the link to that video in the description box down below. So once again, thank you all so much for watching. I hope that you all enjoyed this video. And as always, I will see and talk to you all in the next video. Take care.